A huge thank you to Osprey Bags for sponsoring this week's video.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another landscape photography vlog. And this one is extra special because today, or I guess tonight, I'm going to be trying to shoot the Comet, which I'm sure you've seen some pretty awesome pictures of. And it's been going on for a few days. I've seen a lot of just incredible shots so far. And I unfortunately haven't gotten one yet. I tried going out last night, and unfortunately in San Francisco, it was super foggy. There weren't a lot of options for me. I had to rush up the mountain, but it was weird because the fog was in kind of an awkward spot. So it wasn't like I got the Comet over some beautiful fog flow. I pretty much just got the Comet over nothing. I really want to get a shot tonight. So I planned out to shoot a seascape with the Comet, because I knew that the Comet would face west, but luckily tonight you can see around me, it's completely clear all day. It was socked in like with fog, tons of fog, and right at sunset the fog cleared. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it stays like this so that we can get some really cool shots of the Comet. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are too, and yeah, let's see what we can do here.
Little did I know when filming that intro clip, this video would end up giving me some of my best images that I've ever captured, because not only do we shoot the Comet with some moonlight, but also the Milky Way. And as an added bonus, I also share my experiences photographing the Aurora in Yosemite National Park. So stay tuned, and I really hope you enjoy it.
All right, and now it is time to play the waiting game, which, I don't know, not a bad place to wait. I'm thinking we're probably going to need to wait at least another 30 minutes before we can really see the Comet come out. And then from there, we'll be able to shoot it for at least an hour. And it'll be really interesting to see what the moonlight does, because we've got, I think, a full moon tonight. So I'm nervous and excited to see how that affects the shot. Of course, I'm hoping it doesn't drown out the Comet. If it doesn't, then it could add some really nice light to the foreground instead of just being completely pitch black. So I'm kind of excited and nervous at the same time to see what that does to the shot. It's starting to finally get dark enough to potentially see the Comet. I can't see it with the naked eye yet, but I'm just doing a few test shots just to see if anything shows up.
After waiting a few more minutes, I finally saw the Comet appear through the sky, and it was absolutely stunning.
There it is, you guys. Got the Comet. That's pretty cool. Okay. So if we stand a little bit further in that direction to the left, we should be able to get that Comet right behind the sea stack. And that's gonna just keep traveling to the right and down into the horizon. Wow, look at that.
So I decided to shift my perspective, and I found a really interesting composition of the sea stacks down below with some of that twilight glow and the Comet right up above.
So I'm gonna try a pretty wide composition here, maybe at about 30 millimeters. I'm at f3.2. Let's try a 6-second exposure at ISO 800. Let's give this one a shot now.
And so here it is, my first Comet shot of the night, and I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. I really liked the balance of the sea stacks down below with that long exposure, and that beautiful gradient of twilight from orange to blue up to the Comet. Now for this one, because of some of that moonlight and the twilight ambient glow, I was able to get a fairly clean shot at ISO 800 with only a single exposure, but I did take a bracket just in case I would need it.
That looks really nice. Wow, look at the colors in there too with sunset. There's still that little bit of sunset glow. This is so much better than what I shot last night. So much better. This exposure looks really nice. I like how smooth the waves look here at that 6-second exposure. The ISO is pushed just enough to where I can really see all the detail here, but still keep it pretty clean. And in terms of my focus, I'm just focusing on infinity. Everything out there is at infinity, so, you know, really the key is if you can find a star to focus on, that's the best thing to do. All right, so I thought it would be kind of cool to show you what my camera's seeing right now. So here's that 6-second exposure, f3.2, ISO 800. I mean, look at that beautiful glow. We still have some glow from sunset, and the moonlight is starting to bask the waves, which, I mean, looks pretty incredible right now. It's pretty cool.
So here's that horizontal composition that I was just working on, very similar to the vertical, but even in the short amount of time that had passed, some of that ambient light had dropped and the comet got more vivid. After shooting this one, I thought it would be fun to get right up against the sea stack to see if I could get the comet up above. But as I walked closer, that moonlight got intense really quick.
Well, I sacrificed the shoes. I'm standing in the water right now. I'm about ankle deep in the water, because I'm trying to get this shot of the comet literally right on top of the sea stack right here. This is crazy.
So I took a few ultra-long exposures of the comet above this sea stack, but I realized they were turning out a bit boring. And as I stood there, I thought to myself that the wave flow down below getting hit by the moonlight was one of the most interesting elements that was missing from my composition.
Now I'm doing something a little weird right now. I have a really, really high ISO and f2.8, and I'm trying to do very short exposures. So I'm trying to do like 1 second exposures for this, maybe even just a little bit more, so that I can see some of the textures in the waves, because it's really cool when you can get some of that water flow coming through. And then what I can do is I can take my ISO down to about 800, bump this up to maybe like a 5 second exposure, and then get a shot for the background and the sky. And then I think I'm going to blend these two together, because I really, really like the wave action down there.
These compositions were a lot of fun to take, and that really strong moonlight added such a nice glow to the foreground, allowing for these beautiful wave textures. But it's kind of bittersweet because of course the sky up above has less drama than in some of the previous images.
So the comet is definitely less intense now that the moon has risen. I can still see it with the naked eye, but it's a lot less vivid than it was earlier. We might go over there, see if we can grab just a few more, but it might be almost time to start wrapping this up.
Right before packing my gear, I decided to take this last composition, and even though the comet was a bit more dull in this shot than some of the previous ones, I thought that the pastel light here was really beautiful, and it was nice to have some clouds in the sky to add some texture to the scene. I learned a ton shooting the comet this night, trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, and so I decided to take those lessons and apply them to shooting the comet the next evening. All right, you guys, so before we dive into this evening's comet adventure, I wanted to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Osprey Bags. Now, when Osprey reached out to me, I was immediately on board, and the main reason for that is I've actually used their bags for the last 9 years, and it's been my main backpacking bag. It still stayed completely intact, so I knew that they stood by their quality, and they sent me this one, which is the Manta 24 pack, and it came at a perfect timing because I've been having some shoulder and back issues, probably from just carrying way too much gear up hills and up elevation without having proper shoulder and back support. So inside the bag, I have one of their camera cubes. This one is the small camera cube, and what's cool about these is they can fit into most hiking bags and day packs. It also has a protective hard shell to make sure your camera gear stays safe. Inside here, I can fit about 3 lenses and 2 camera bodies, and even my larger lens, the Nikon 14-24 with adapter, fits completely into this camera cube. And then they sent me this chest mount as well, which I'm really excited to use for woodland photography, because there's occasions, especially in the redwoods, where I just want to keep my camera on me at all times. I only need 1 camera, 1 lens, so I may as well, for some of that stuff, not even bring a camera bag if I don't need it. So if you want to check out some of these hiking bags and camera accessories for yourself, I'm going to leave a link in the description. All right, let's go shoot a comet. All right, you guys, day number 2 of comet photography, and I find myself at another beach. This time I drove up north towards Marin County, and we also have a really nice clear evening tonight to work with, which will be awesome. Yeah, 1 cloud out there, so great conditions. I learned so much yesterday shooting, and I looked at the files and got a really good sense of what I wanted tonight. And I think, you know, it's lucky that this event isn't just like a 1-day thing, and
we actually have multiple days to really explore and do a bit of trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't. The moon is rising a little bit later tonight, and that should give me an extra 30 minutes to shoot around the sea stacks and get an earlier frame with more of the twilight look to the sky, the comet up above. So check this out. Here's the iconic sea stacks that you might have seen in some of my other videos. And right now we have a super low tide, so you can get right into the rocks here. But as that tide comes up, it'll probably end up getting up to here pretty quick. And then we should be able to get some nice water flow with the rocks and the comet in the background. Never thought I would be photographing a comet over these rocks.
So as it got dark enough to start seeing the comet, I tried a few different compositions, but it was way trickier to frame the comet at this spot than I initially anticipated.
All right, so we got the comet, and I'm kind of trying to get low because one thing I didn't think about earlier, but is kind of a challenge about tonight, is the comet seems a lot higher than it was last night. So I'm trying to see how I can work that into the composition. So I'm just kind of getting in between here, in between these sea stacks, doing more of a close-up with the edges of the sea stacks kind of framing the comet, and then some of the long exposure water down below, maybe like a 5-second exposure of this. I'm able to get everything in focus at infinity. So I'm just keeping the focus really, really simple here. Not going to overcomplicate it. Not bad, not bad. So yeah, that comet's definitely pretty drowned out by the moon now. I think I got a few shots early on in the night that might work nice, but in terms of getting exactly what I was going for, I'm a little bit uncertain right now if this worked.
Before packing up, I decided to try a couple more moonlit compositions, and I ended up with a surprising result. So this photo isn't a great composition, but as you can see on the left side, the Milky Way was starting to appear in frame. I realized if I had way less moonlight, it would be possible to get the Milky Way and the comet in the same photograph. So I decided to wait a few nights for less moonlight to see if I could get out and shoot something more dramatic.
All right, you guys, so I am back out shooting the comet, and I think this might be the best night out of all of them because we don't have any more moonlight, which is a downside for the foreground, but it's giving us this incredible view of the Milky Way and the comet together. I saw the Milky Way appearing just, in the left side of that last frame that I showed you, and I got the inspiration to head back out to see if I could get more interesting shots at that first beach we were at. Now for this shoot, I decided to do things a little bit differently because instead of just using a camera on a tripod, I decided to pull out the star tracker. And what this allows me to do is freeze the sky during long exposures. So I'm sure if you've tried long exposures of the night sky before, you've seen some star trails, and that's because of the Earth's rotation. But this device moves at that same rate aligned to the North Star and allows you to get much longer exposures of the Milky Way without seeing that star trail, which also gives you a lot more detail, and you can see usually more colors in the stars as well. So I'm going to use this device because in the Bay Area we do have a lot of light pollution, and I think this might help for the shots, and I think it might even help to get more comet detail as well. And then in terms of my setup here, I'm still using the Sony A1, but this time I pulled out the Nikon 14-24 so that I could shoot this at 2.8. I want to let as much light into the camera as possible by using that lower f-stop. And for my exposures here, what I'm thinking might work well is 30-second exposures at ISO 1600, f2.8. Now, I could go lower with the f-stop and do longer exposures, but I think what I'm going to do instead, since the sky is already a bit bright, like I'm able to get a really, really bright exposure with this 30 seconds, what I think I'm going to do is just stack images. So I'm going to take a sequence of 10 images on the tracker, so 10 for the Milky Way, and then I'm going to turn the tracker off down here, and then take 10 more for the foreground and blend all those images together. And it'll be a little bit of a construction project, but I'm really excited to see how the results turn out.
This image turned out better than I could have ever imagined. I love how you have this almost triangle formation of the Milky Way on the left side, the comet on the right, and then that pointy sea stack down towards the bottom middle. This photograph takes everything I loved about the previous shoots and just adds that extra layer of interest with the Milky Way. Now, before photographing this one, I did manage to capture an image at twilight, and here's how that turned out. So this photo was taken a bit different than the previous one because I didn't have my star tracker out yet. So for this one, I just did 5 exposures for the sky on my tripod and the same for the foreground, and then I stacked everything together. What I loved about this shot versus the last one is how you can still see some of that beautiful sunset glow off the horizon, and with the angle of the Milky Way, you can see the little arch in the sea stack. This month was pretty crazy for photography because before shooting the comet, I was out in the eastern Sierras when predictions of Aurora started, and it was looking like a pretty cloudy day at first, but I managed to make my way up to Glacier Point, and sure enough, right after sunset, the clouds parted and I ended up getting one of the most amazing shows that I've ever seen. So here's one of the many compositions that I took during that evening, and it's really hard to put into words just how incredible this moment was to witness. For this one, I ended up doing a vertical panorama of about 3 images stitched together, and then I also did a darker composition for the lights down below. 2 of my favorite small details in this image are, one, the climbers up on the cliff above the valley, and then the face of Half Dome getting that really subtle pink glow from the aurora. This image was shot on my Sony A1 with my Nikon 14-24. Here's a way more simple frame, this time a single exposure taken from one of those time-lapse sequences. And to clean it up, I just used a bit of Lightroom denoise. What really blew me away was that super sharp light pillar on the left side of the frame. Here's another vertical panorama, this time 4 horizontal images stitched together, all taken at 14mm. You can see there's a lot more moonlight in the valley, so this was much earlier in the night before the moon set, and my goal here was to really show off the tail end of the Milky Way that was going perfectly vertical through the frame here. It was just amazing to be able to catch the Milky Way, Andromeda right there, and even pillars right off the horizon. These photos of the aurora and the comet were really special to me, and not just because they're interesting shots, but because they represent a big change this year for me in terms of photography. Unfortunately, I've had a ton of issues outside of photography that's really stopped me from getting out and shooting as much as I would like. And since photography is not only my favorite thing to do, but also my main way to decompress, it's made this year quite a challenging one for me. So being able to take these images and share them with you all really means a lot to me. So with that, I really hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And if you want to learn more from me, you can check out my tutorials and workshops on my website. As always, I appreciate you watching and supporting the channel, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.